Share the Dignity is an Australian women's charity that works to make a real difference in the lives of those experiencing homelessness, fleeing domestic violence, and doing it tough by distributing period products to women and girls. Rochelle Courtenay is Share the Dignity's founder, but her most proud title is Pad Lady. Rochelle leads a team of volunteers that have collected and distributed over 3 million period products across Australia since its inception in 2015. The charity has over 5,000 volunteers Australia-wide and provides multiple initiatives aimed at maintaining the dignity of women. Welcome to Pure Health Hub, Rochelle.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. Now, look, despite the leaps or the huge leaps I think we've had in gender equality over the past 2 decades, women and girls are still disproportionately affected by extreme poverty. So in your experience, what are some of the reasons and subsequent outcomes of this?
Yeah, look, I think that domestic and family violence plays the #1 role in why women are experiencing hardships of poverty, homelessness, and things like that. I think that for us in our lane of Share the Dignity, ensuring that no girl ever misses a day of education because their family can't afford sanitary items is paramount to what we do, right? It's tough enough being a female as it is. And we've already got so many barriers that we need to jump over before we even start the same race as men. But to actually not have access to sanitary items is one thing that we hope that we've been able to make a real difference in.
Yeah. So it really does come back to that domestic violence, which is still a significant contributor to the women living in poverty. So the outcomes of this, of the domestic violence side of things then, is what are some of those outcomes? So obviously people are not, they're not being educated or unable to work. What are some of the other outcomes of women being subjected to the domestic violence and living in poverty?
Yeah, look, you can even take it back even further and young girls who have lived through family violence. So whether that's sexual assault, whether that's living through what family violence does in a home and in a relationship, we end up with women who have mental health problems. They end up with drug problems. They end up with, with criminal problems. If you just think about if we tried to fix that before they got so broken, we would actually have a different society, right? We would have a different world. And that just covers me in goosebumps because I will never forget hearing hang on, I'll try not to cry. I remember being in the city and going past this woman at about 8:30 at night. Anyone who knows me knows that I am a morning person, not a nighttime person. So I would have had to have an afternoon nap to have got to that time at night. But going past her, and I stopped and she was sitting down outside of a cafe, and I said, can I get you a coffee or a drink or something to eat? And then anyway, and I did, and I sat down beside her and she was grasping this bag, and it was back in 2017. I remember because she told me how she got this bag for Christmas, and it was an it's in the bag. I didn't tell her who I was, but I just sat there and listened to how her dad dropped her off at an orphanage, and I know where that orphanage here is in Queensland, on her birthday, because her mum had died of cancer and he couldn't do it anymore. So he dropped her off and said, I'll be back by your next birthday. Every year she waited outside for her dad. She ended up leaving that orphanage, which had a really bad, really terrible name of sexual assault and a lot of other things that had happened, but she never got fixed, right? So she ended up in one domestic violence relationship after another, addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, addicted to gambling, and now sitting on the streets as I think she was 43 years old back then. So all of that trauma because her dad couldn't cope. And because we institutionalized her in something that broke her so badly for so long. In and out of jail, she'd been in and out of relationships, just one lost soul after another.
Yeah, look, it sends shivers down my spine as well, and it is hard to hear that But I think, and it is one of the greatest, I guess, one of the greatest challenges, and one of the things that I think we need to advocate a great deal about is mental health support services in this country. And I don't think Australia is the only one that's lagging behind. I think it's left behind in many nations. But it's only compounding every year, and with things like COVID and other issues, it just then compounded again and compounded again. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. There needs to be something, we've got to step in there somewhere. So obviously what you're doing in your part is extraordinary, and helping women to recoup that dignity. So that's fantastic. Share the Dignity's primary objective, of course, is provide sanitary items to women and girls. What other initiatives do you run to support women?
Yeah, I mean, the premise of Share the Dignity is ensuring that women and girls are afforded the dignity in life that we all just take for granted. So we run our sanitary campaigns in March and August, where we collect sanitary items in every Woolworths collection boxes go out, and people can make those donations. We work with around 3,200 charities around Australia. So we're not actually working with the end user, but we work with the charities to give them one less thing that they need to worry about. Because before I started Share the Dignity, charities would say, oh, they're the last thing to be donated, yet they're the first things to go. And they just couldn't afford to keep them there themselves. What were they going to choose to give people? A phone credit for them to be able to get accommodation, for crisis accommodation, or sanitary items? So there's just not enough money in there, and we were there never to compete with any charities. We were there just to complement them, to make one less thing that they needed to worry about. But it was certainly our lane. It was what we were going to do, and make sure that they had access to sanitary items. And at Christmas time, we also do our It's in the Bag Christmas appeal, which is like my favourite child. So it's where we ask everyday Australians to give a handbag, fill it with life's necessities, the things that we all take for granted, but they're absolute necessities: toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, soap, shampoo, conditioner, sanitary items. Then whatever else you put in your bag is completely up to you. So people put in there things like a scarf, sunglasses. What do you have in your bag that you couldn't live without? Chapstick for me, right? I can never find a chapstick. I can never find hair ties. So things like that women would get for Christmas when they would otherwise not get a Christmas gift, let alone the fact that they can wash their own hair with something that smells nice.
Yeah. And they're all such expensive products too, right?
Absolutely.
And for women, as you say, we're the ones who, have already got, the list of things that we have to deal with. So, okay. So you operate as that almost, I don't know what to say it, but a wholesaler, sort of, obviously going out and supporting. So is there other charities, other things that you do? I'm sure this is probably just the one.
No, that is it. We're the conduit of kindness. So we literally are just getting what Australians are giving and passing that on to the charities who are doing the really hard work, which is doing the counselling, doing all of the services that are there to help the women in need. And for most of those, they've never been able to give women Christmas presents. At Christmas time, always children are easy to buy for, right? Until they're about 10 years old, and then they're not so easy to buy for, which is why we do 3 different types of bags. We do a women's bag, we do a teen girls bag, and we do a mum and bub bag. And that teen girl bag came into play because we were realizing that there were so many young girls who were experiencing homelessness and we're not getting Christmas gifts because they tapped out of that really cool age to get a present, right? They're hard to buy for. So giving them a bag with all of life's necessities is such a delight for them.
Yeah, and for them to have their own, because I'm sure everything just gets shared around, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
So tell me then, what was the catalyst? What was the catalyst to start this social impact project?
Yeah, look, it was literally just reading an article in February 2015 that talked about how there were 48,000 women who didn't have somewhere safe to call home. And I found that extraordinary in Australia. That is like
scary.
A football stadium. Every bum on their seats are women that don't have somewhere safe to call home. That's ridiculous. But the fact that they were using socks and newspaper and wadded up toilet paper to deal with their period here in Australia is something that I had never ever considered. Now, I'd suffered severely from endometriosis. So for me, my period every single month was an absolute nightmare. Yeah. But I always had access to sanitary items. I never even thought what it would be like to not have them and have a shower, a washing machine to wash my clothes that I'd stained throughout the day, Panadol, chocolate, and a hot water bottle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just couldn't have imagined that. And I actually don't believe that Share the Dignity would probably exist if I hadn't suffered so severely. It's really resonated with me. And at that stage, my girls were 16 and 14. And I just thought, you know what? The standard that you walk past is the standard that you accept. And there was no way in the world I wanted my girls reading an article about that and it still hadn't been fixed, because it actually wasn't the first article that had ever been written on it. And I'm like, oh my God, how do you just jog on from that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was my job. Yeah, I think for me, it was my job to make sure that everyone had that's bullshit moment. That is just not okay here in Australia, because there's no way you can unhear it. And I just needed to make it so simple for people to donate. And it doesn't get any simpler than buying them at Woolworths and then dropping them straight in the box.
Yeah, yeah. But, you know, and that, look, you have made that a simple process, but I'm sure it wasn't a simple process to get it to that point. I mean, you know, it's a lot of people see a lot of, you know, things in society that we, you know, that need to be changed or improved upon or whatever, but it can be a scary task. So how did you go about that?
Yeah, I never thought of any of it as scary. So I always just thought,
naivety, right? I think that's what most
yeah. I didn't have any expectations, and I also had nothing to lose, because what did I have to lose? The only thing I had to lose was that somebody was going to get a packet of pads or tampons, or they weren't. And I needed them to get them. And I just knew that I always say it, there isn't a woman in Australia who wouldn't be empathetic with another woman having to use wadded up toilet paper or go without. So how was I going to do that? I was going to make sure that everybody knew about it. So the whole thing was about marketing to the women who needed to make the donation. And the donation is quite simple. And so I went out directly with speaking to the brands that were already talking to women. So Terry White Chemist, Fernwood Fitness, Lorna Jack, like I just needed to get all those brands on board. Yeah. So, I did go out with a really big mission. I had a very big vision board. And, you know, for most part, it's been really successful. I remember having Intimo on board very, very early on. And it was actually the first public speaking gig that I did to over 1,000 women. I was so nervous. I was nearly sick to my eyeballs. Now I have probably done it 7,222 times without a blink of an eyelid. But that very first time was just nerve-wracking, because I didn't know what I didn't know right back then. Now I know it passionately, and I was just making shit up the whole way along. So
fake it till you make it, right?
Fake it till you make it. And I had imposter syndrome all the way through until about last year, when I just sat back and went, you know what, I deserve a seat at any bloody table.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, you know, you should be able to sit back and really, you know, think about what you've achieved. And clearly it's doing remarkably well, given you've now handed out 3 million sanitary items. I mean, that's just extraordinary. You know,
3.3 million packets of sanitary items. We've now had over 730,000 bags donated. It's $69 million worth of donations that have come through our charity in the last 6 years. And we removed the GST on sanitary items. So that is probably our biggest achievement ever.
Oh, isn't it? I mean,
if I did nothing else, I'm more than happy that I did that.
That's extraordinary, of course. However, sadly, unsurprising that it was even implied. So yeah, you were saying that you went out to corporate sponsors, and you know, so was that a fairly easy sell?
You know what I did? I networked until the cows came home. I put myself in rooms that I needed to be in with the people that were there, and I always made sure I spoke to 3 people that I'd never spoken to before. Yeah. So I applied, and I nominated myself for every award that was out there, not to win the award, but to be in the room with the women that were incredible in what they did. And that was Janine Alice from Boost Juice. That was Lorna Jane. It was Kathy Reed. It was amazing women. The Telstra, I was never going to win there, though, especially at the beginning. I hadn't even accomplished very much, but I wanted to be in that room with those women.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I think that's a great lesson, isn't it, really, is making sure, and it's not always easy, I think, for a particular generation. It's getting much easier for a younger generation for us to understand that we do it, and we do deserve a seat at that table regardless of what we're doing, and that we, have every right to be out there chatting because they want to chat to you too, right? So I think that's a real issue for women of our age or my age, I should say, is the fact that people get very shy about that and feel that they don't have enough to offer. But moving just into, often I feel like, you're walking along the streets and there's, everybody's seeking. Obviously, I would have my charities that we support throughout the year, but there is a desperate need for charity funds. And so do you find that there's a lot of fatigue in that area?
Well, I mean, I would question why there are so many charities in Australia in the first place. I would say that that's the government not doing what they need to be doing, is why we have to come in there and do the job for them. True. So every charity deserves to be there, and every charity and every person. There are 26 million people who live in Australia. I don't even know the numbers of the charities, but what I do know is that there could never be enough people doing good in this world. And I support them all, but I would say that our charity is a very specific lane, right? So if it's of interest to you, you donate to us. I think one of the things that we've done as a charity that's very unique is that we've made it super easy to help. We've made it diverse in how you can help. So for me, I never wanted to be the charity that just stood there with my hand out. I wanted you to always get something back in return. So we always did a dignity, which meant that you came along, you got to get together with your friends and you got to hear about, so at our dignities, you get to hear from for example, a great influencer like Jane Hall from Wentworth. She emceed our events in Melbourne, and we've had Rebecca Gibney and some amazing women who've been present at these high teas. But the real reason people go are to hear from the women that we've been able to help and the charities that we work with, and to hear the stories of why you put your own hand into your pocket and bought a $5 packet of pads, and you get to hear that impact. Now, that's really rare. And I think that's probably the success of our large social media following, is that we're really raw. I'm just sitting here typing and just going, I can't wait to see the end of this year, but this is some of the stories that we've been able to share, and we can't do that without you donating to us or following us or sharing our passion.
Yeah, exactly. And we do want to see the end result of the contribution, whether that's physical, financial, whatever. I think it's really important that we get that close to that, rather than just, handing out and then just, with your name badged on it or something silly. So I think you're right. I think you really hit the nail on the head, right? You can, can feel and see that response. So, wow, well done you. So 2015, you started this. So you can say well done you, but to be really honest, I am like the figurehead at the beginning of this charity. We have 6,500 volunteers. We have 7 diverse board directors who give so passionately. Everybody makes a difference, right? Whether they jump on what we call the dignity train for 1 week, 2 years, 5 years. I've still got team leaders that have been around since the very beginning. I don't even know how they're still talking to me after some of the things that I've gone. It's in the bag just came about when I was cleaning out my bathroom cupboard, and the next day I put it on socials, and we never had any plan whatsoever. And those women still back me. They still love me, and they do what we need to do, because now, if I did it to them now and then, I would know better, right? So, well, obviously we learn a lot along the way. Yeah. But you should be patting yourself on the back, because they're obviously still with you for a reason. Congratulations on Share the Dignity. It really is an extraordinary charity, social impact project. And we're thrilled to have you with us, Rochelle. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for sharing the dignity.